Okay. I think we're good now, right? Can you folks hear me? I'm hoping so. I hit stream, and then YouTube was like, oh, yes, live streaming's not available right now, which I've never seen, and hopefully it is wrong. It says that there are 110 people watching, and there you go. Are we, yes, I can. Good afternoon. All good. All right, well, then I guess it's streaming. I don't expect YouTube to lie to me, except when they always do. So, hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day where you're at. We got audio, we got picture, we got all kinds of stuff. Good to hear. All right. Let's see. Got a morning from Wyoming from ProJG. Big hello from sunny Cambridgeshire. Or Cambridgeshire. Calgary, sunny there as well. It's sunny here. It's lovely. Yesterday was a gorgeous day here, here in my neck of the woods. Let's see. Houston, 5 coffees in and raring to go. You are going to have to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to say. Hello from sunny central Scotland. That's a lot of fun to say. Is Stargrave the sci-fi version of Frostgrave? To some degree, Six Gunner, yes, but with some differences. Building a pair of Caradon Overlord ironclads. What's Stargrave? Some kind of sci-fi skirmish? Yes, as it turns out it is. Hey, VJ Morph, how you doing? Party time, indeed. Let's see here. Good morning from a really beautiful day here in Cincinnati. I think it's lovely in the many places, except for Denmark. Evidently, it is somewhat cloudy in Denmark, so you know that happens, I guess. How you doing, Dennis? Good afternoon from the Isle of Wight. Nice. London. Gothenburg. Stargrave feels like the most exciting thing since Frostgrave Ghost Archipelago, or possibly since Oathmark was released. I never played Oathmark, and I wasn't super crazy interested, although I did buy some of the models. I bought the skeletons and I think the goblins. But Oathmark is more of a rank and flank style game where you're moving in blocks, and that's kind of not my jam for so. Good morning from West Bend, Wisconsin. First time catching live in a while. Good to hear it. Burning Beard Studios. Good morning from Michigan. Trying to knock out 40 Skaven before we start remodeling the basement. That's probably... You want to get rid of the rats before you start remodeling. That makes sense. Hi from Madison. Hello from New Jersey. Evening from Australia. Got Wales, Denmark, London. Hello from Michigan. Good day from Australia. Good morning from Small Junction City, Wisconsin. Starting to assemble my Primaris Dreadnought. Looking forward to the show. Well, I'm glad you're here, Davis. Checking in from Halifax while I attempt to clean up an old solidified puddle of syrup in the back of the cupboard. Not fun. Indeed, I can understand that. We got a new fridge recently because our old fridge was about to croak. And so we bought a new fridge, and I cleaned it out, you know, which was meaning, like, some of the things I'm like, this is going in the garbage or recycling, and this is, like, going to go in a cooler until the new fridge gets here, and then we'll, you know. But there was a jar that was stuck in the back, like, something had leaked adjacent to it, and I don't know what it was, but it stuck it to the back, and finally I was just like, I don't care, I can just stay in there. Yeah, it's fine. Good morning from Maine, tuning in while building some Beastclaw Raiders. Nice. It's not that cloudy in Denmark, says Errant Painting. Well, it's not, you know, the same everywhere, obviously. I get that. Cincinnati gang. Hello from Lima, Peru. Well, how you doing, Angela? Let's see here. Can I use Tamiya or Tamiya, depending on who you talk to, acrylic paint for minis? Yes. It's, from what I understand, it's a touch more expensive than other miniature paints, somewhat. But yeah, I mean, you can. Most people, I don't hear a lot of people using it in the miniature painting realm. There are specific colors that people will use. There's a color called like smoke red or clear red or something like that people like to use for blood splatter a lot from Tamiya. But that's the only real thing that I know about there. Yeah. It's way too early in Alaska. Well, yeah. Good evening from Qatar. How you doing? Greetings from Detroit, Nerd Bunker, painting Crimson Court vampires this morning. Yeah, I want to get to those guys eventually. I've got them. I picked them up from my local last week. So I just started on Twitch. On Friday, I just started working on more Cursed City. Basically 4 heroes and the skeleton watch captain guard guy. So maybe I'll work on those guys afterwards. I'm not sure. I also have some Chaos Slaves to Darkness guys that I want to get working on as well. Those are ready to go. Other than they need to be primed, but otherwise they're ready to go. My wife has been eyeing new fridges recently. My wallet's already crying. Ours was 30 years old, at least. So, yeah, the new one is it's the same size because it had to fit kind of where there's cupboards and stuff and whatnot. So it's the same size, but I feel like it's physically larger on the inside. Not by a lot. Not like a TARDIS kind of a situation, but I think that it's just not as thick. I don't know. It's quieter. That's for darn sure. Let's see here. Best thing about Stargrave, walking past the Games Workshop shelves at my local gaming store and having an excuse to buy minis from Infinity, Warlord Games, Antares, etc. And a smiley face. Yeah, actually and again, there is technically kind of a line of miniatures that's available for Frostgrave and also for Stargrave from this company called North Star Military something or other models. Anyway, and I did order some from them. They make these really nice plastics for Frostgrave, which are not GW quality. They're not like crazy, like super, super, super high, like sharpness detail, but they're really quite nice. And they made soldiers and barbarians and cultists and all kinds of stuff like that for Frostgrave. And now, at least to start for Stargrave, they've got, I think, mercenaries, crew, and troopers, I think, are the 3 boxes that are going to be here maybe this upcoming week. So, yeah. I pre-ordered Stargrave, but it went out of stock before mine shipped. Wow, that's crazy. Surviving on a PDF copy for now. Yeah, I did see that there's a PDF copy available on wargamevault.com. So that's kind of cool. It's cool. I don't know. I've been looking a lot at Wargame Vault a lot lately. There's a lot of great stuff in there. I also picked up a copy of Forbidden Psalm, which is based off of there's an RPG game called Morkborg, which maybe you've heard of. I don't know. It's an indie thing, but it's sort of getting some popularity. And Forbidden Psalm is kind of based off of that same sort of thing, but it's a miniature skirmish fantasy game. So, do we lock in a weekend for virtual? No, not as of yet. I gotta get that nailed down. I've been busy on this secret project, which is about to be. It's just about. My busy part of it is about to end for at least a little bit, so that's good. And hopefully it should come out this month or early next, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe it comes out just in time for virtual TMX. We will see. But yeah, it's basically if I'm not sleeping, eating, working my day job, or editing a video, I've been working on the secret project. So it's very close. It's very close. Do you know if I can varnish a miniature to don't make the paint jump off while I'm working on other parts of the mini? I mean, plenty of people do varnish during a process. Like a lot of times you'll see in tutorials, people will get to a certain point, varnish the mini, and then start painting again. It's generally when they're going to use some sort of process that can kind of eat the paint layers underneath. So you varnish so that the paint layers that you've already finished are protected. But yeah, you can totally varnish mid stream. It depends on what you want to do. Some people will varnish with a gloss if they want to do a lot of like washes because they want it to flow around on the smooth surface better. But more often than not, people will varnish with something kind of matte so that the paint has like it's called a tooth. So the paint has something to basically, attach to. I picked up a lot of Warcry terrain over the years. Finally got the bug to paint a bunch of it. Hopefully it lasts. Nice. Let's see here. Good morning from Toronto. Looking for modeling putty that is strong enough to drill a hole into. Was looking at Milliput. Any recommendations? I would probably tell you green stuff. Yeah, just standard normal green stuff probably gets about the hardest out of all the different types of like 2-part putties and things like that. I mean, Milliput might do the job for you, but green stuff would probably do the job. I love how customizable North Star stuff is great for kit bashing. Yeah. I also ordered a bunch of different bits and parts from Puppets War out of Poland. Also maybe last week. The thing that I did with North Star for those 3 boxes of Stargrave miniatures was maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe more. But I did get a thing recently just saying, oh, hey, it's shipped. But it's shipping from England, so it's going to take a month of Sundays to get here for whatever reason these days. COVID, I assume. But yeah, so... but I'm also going to be getting some stuff from Puppets War, which coming from Poland, possibly also a month of Sundays. So there's that. Morkborg is a nice coffee table book. Yeah, it's... I get the feeling, not looking through it, but looking through the the stuff for Forbidden Psalm. Like, Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games on YouTube did a battle report of Forbidden Psalm. So it's playable. But Morkborg, specifically to me, at least as looking through it a little bit, it looks like one of those games that you buy and then never play a little bit. And I'm sure that not everybody does that. But I've done it a bunch. And I know that Matt has done it to some degree as well. There have been plenty of RPGs out there in the past that I've bought and been like, this is going to be a hoot to read. I doubt I'll ever actually play it. Big one for me back in the day was a game called Hole, spelled HOL, which was an acronym for Human Occupied Landfill. And it was an offshoot of White Wolf. It was a company called like Black Dog or something like that, publishing. And it was basically, the idea was it's a sci-fi game and it's way off in the future, and there's this one planet like way outside of, known space, kind of. Like, there's all the stuff that goes on in space goes on over here, and then there's this planet like way over here. It's all by itself. And I don't know, the Federation or whatever is just like, we're going to dump all our garbage there. That'll be great. And then also certain criminals will dump them there too. So that's why it's known as a human occupied landfill. And the entire book was handwritten, like, except for like the title page or like the thing that has the copyright legal information. That was like actually typeset, but everything else is handwritten and then obviously printed and stuff like that. But it was crazy to read. It was hysterical too. But it was one of those games you're like, yeah, there was no way I'd ever play this. But it was a lot of fun to check out. Let's see here. I'm assuming Adam is doing the supervising. Well, I am super. Hey, Emily, how you doing? Good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you as well. Ordered some Bondic yesterday. Yeah, I've really been happy with it as a gap filler. It is the awesomest. If you announce a Kickstarter, I will jump right on that. No, I will not. I mean, that's not the plan. No. Plumbing 2-part putty would work too. I've had some of that. I didn't even get it for modeling. I actually got it for plumbing. But I've wondered about it, like, because we had this thing that was leaking, and so I was at the store, and I was like, hey, got this thing that's leaking. And then they said, 2-part putty, here you go. So, and it worked. It worked great. But as I was using it, I was like, I wonder if this would be good for modeling in some fashion, like maybe terrain. I don't know. But yeah. An 80-20 mix of magic sculpt / green stuff would be resistant to shattering and cheaper than pure green stuff. Interesting. Let's see here. Will you be using some Frostgrave with bits and guns for Stargrave? Probably not some of that. Well, it's a good question. I could easily see, so I have taken some of the barbarians from Frostgrave, and instead of putting normal heads on them, I put gas mask heads on them. And then instead of giving them swords and knives and, pointed sticks, like is what generally comes with the barbarian set, I have given them AK-47s, which is not sci-fi. Particularly, it's post-apocalyptic, I guess, but not sci-fi. So there's that. But I mean, you could. I mean, if you wanted to go down that road, I guess you could give them. If you wanted to have like sort of like feral, like this is part of a colony that got cut off, and they all kind of went a little, boyoing. And could give them like weird heads and then just different guns, but still use the barbarian bodies. I could do that. I think that, yeah. So yeah, I could see that. Let's see here. Morkborg is an RPG. Yes, it is. Yeah. But there's now a game called Forbidden Psalm, which is based off of Morkborg, but it is a miniatures game, and I saw it on wargamevault.com. And like I said, Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games also talked about it just recently too. I think he did like a read through and a battle report, something like that. Whole is hilarious to read. It is, and you spelled it right too with the little line above the O. Yeah, yeah. Whole was it was hysterical to read. There was like a point where I guess they were working on it like at a Denny's or something like that. The I think it was 3 guys. It was at least 2 guys, but it might have been 3 guys. And at one point they had like their waitress just like sign the page, and then they like designed the page all the way around it. It was just crazy. It was nuts. Oops. That was the Black Dog imprint. Yep. Matthew Sears says, I collect Black Dog books, mostly bad. Yeah, they had another game, or they had an expansion they added onto it called Buttery Wholesomeness, and that was when you could actually do character creation. The original version of Whole, there were like 10 characters that you could use that were pre-made, and that there was no character creation. But then when they released Buttery Wholesomeness, then you could create your own characters, but it was predominantly done via random charts, which was funny. I one time just was messing around and trying to create a character once when I was bored at my security job, and I don't remember much about him except that he was the son of Satan, but B, he also had a limp because he had a big splinter piece of the true cross stuck in his leg, which is a weird combination. But, you know, when you're randomly rolling on a chart or multiple charts, then that's what happens. Howdy from Elko, Illinois, working at 12 today. Well, that's a bummer. But glad to see you. 5 Parsecs from Home looks really intriguing. Yeah, I got a PDF copy of that from the publisher. And that is a sci-fi kind of skirmishy kind of sort of thing, but it is predominantly designed for solo play. So if you're interested in solo play, take a look at 5 Parsecs from Home. You can also get that if you're interested. Like the book, it's being published by Modiphius. Ivan, who made 5 Parsecs from Home, has had, I think, 2 versions come out previously, like as an indie thing. I think the name of the company is Nordic Weasel Games, Nordic Weasel Press, something like that. Anyway, but the 3rd edition, excuse me, the 3rd edition that's coming out very soon. PDF is, I think, already out, but the book is not yet hitting stores or whatever. But that's actually being published by Modiphius. So Modiphius swooped in and said, hey, we'll publish this and whatever. So there's like better artwork and better layout and all that kind of jazz. You know, that's kind of the thing that comes along with some of that stuff. So it is a solo play kind of sci-fi skirmish game, which is interesting. And but yeah, I think you can get that as well on Wargame Download. Wargame Download is Wargame Vault. Wargame Vault is .com is a huge place full of just all kinds of great little kind of indie games and stuff like that. I bought a box of Thousand Suns that have been sitting on the shelf of my FLGS for 2 years. Now that I've opened the box and looked at the filigree, I have to ask you to please pray for me. So if you're going to go with gold, then you're going to want to look around a little bit more for something. But if you're going to go with like a silver filigree, then definitely use the Vallejo Model Metallic Air stuff. It just makes that stuff just paint up really quickly. Really, really good. Still haven't played a pure RPG since TSR's Gamma World and perhaps Traveler in the early 80s. Oh, I got a friend who's big into Traveler still to this day. Let's see here. Feisty Crabman. Good morning, friends. Managed to get my plumbing repair finished on time to make the stream. Nice. Have you used epoxy sculpt for filling seams? No, I've tried liquid green stuff. That stunk. And not like literally like vapor stunk. It just was bad at it. I've used Vallejo plastic putty, didn't have great luck with that. The issue I have with nearly any kind of putty for gap filling is that you put it on there, you smooth it out, it looks great. Perfect. Then it dries via evaporation from the fluid that's in the putty, and then, whoops, where it was like smooth, right? It goes and goes back down into the gap again. So the gap is maybe slightly less, but still there. Then you have to put another layer on it, and another layer on it, and another layer on it. But with Bondic, you go and you squirt some of it in there, and you sort of smooth it out. You shine a little flashlight on it for 20 seconds, and you're kind of done, because it doesn't dry via evaporation. It cures via the light. So it doesn't sink, it doesn't shrink. That's the main issue is that we've got shrinkage going on with our normal putties and stuff like that, which is why it takes layer after layer after layer after layer. With Bondic, the actual issue you have with Bondic, if you have to make sure you don't put too much in, because when you tell it to harden up with the with the light, you could get a hump in there instead of a gap. So yeah. Let's see here. 5 parsecs is very inspiring in terms of character and campaign background. Interesting. Any recommendations for a co-op skirmish game? Well, I mean, you can do that. 5 parsecs can be done, from what I understand, in that same fashion. I remember reading through it and saying, basically they were like, well, just take your crew and split it into 2 parts, and then you've got 2 parts of your people. And I think you could probably do the same thing with Stargrave if you want to, because, well, Stargrave is also co-op. Like, Stargrave has the ability to do some solo play, but maybe not as much as 5 parsecs. But this would be you could also play co-op with this if you wanted to some degree. Otherwise, another option would be, is that if you're looking for fantasy, is the Elder Scrolls stuff, is that co-op? I mean, it can be, I think. So can, I think, even Fallout, I think, like Wasteland Warfare, if you want to go down that road. Let's see here. People talking about plumbing putty and milliput and green stuff. Happy Saturday from a sunny Nebraska. How you doing, Cordial? They used revolvers and lever-action rifles in Firefly. AKs can totally be sci-fi. Yeah, I suppose that's probably true. Vehicle stats in whole were turnableness and speediosity. Yep, that sounds about right. Bored at security job is how Snake gets into the compound and everything goes to hell. Can also tell when you're searching for him by using the sudden change in music and the exclamation point overhead. That's true. I was guarding a diaper plant, and guard is a strong word. I was mainly there to give instructions to truck drivers on where they should park. That was also, if the fire alarms went off, I was to call into the building and say, is this really a fire alarm? And then they would say, no, it was a mistake, because that happened all the time. So yeah, they disconnected it. It used to be where the fire alarm would go off, it would automatically send a call directly, like automated, to the fire department, who would then, fire up and then come on over. And it happened so many times that eventually there was just like, now instead of the fire alarm alerting the fire department, it alerted me out in the shack, and then I would call and say, is this real? And then they would go, no, and then I wouldn't call the fire department. So, except for that one time that the top of the building blew off a little bit, and then that time I had to call the fire department. Diapers are explosive, as it turns out. Not so much the diapers themselves. It's the particles of paper that are floating in the air. It's that can be explosive, as it turns out, which I didn't know until I had that job. Black Dog was also White Wolf's tongue-in-cheek self-insert into their World of Darkness line. Oh, interesting. Am I late for the Fleecy Parade? There has not yet been one. Diesel has been pacing back and forth. I can see Maggie, but she's not currently doing a Fleecy Parade. The windows are open because it's nice out, so there was a burb before that was outside on the bird feeder, and there were several cats that were very interested, but that's otherwise it's been a lazy morning. Spaceman Vic says that pig iron makes great heads for customizing minis. Did that Imperial Guard for gas mask troops. Yeah, the pig iron models are cool. They're all metal instead of, like, say, resin or plastic and everything like that. So if you've got a problem with metal, that's something to be concerned about. They're also all hand sculpted, so they've got a definite kind of an aesthetic to them that is maybe a little bit older. Excuse me, older. Maybe a little bit more retro, almost to some people's mind. But I still kind of like some of their stuff. I painted last year. I painted a bunch of kind of militia guard with them, which was fun. Maybe 10 of them or so. Any thoughts on the new Creature Caster skirmish game Kickstarter, Judgment Eternal Champions? Not really. I saw that they launched a Kickstarter. I saw some of the models. I know Sam had done some of the painting on some of the models, and that was cool. They described it as a MOBA, and so my brain shut off. I think I tried to play one of those video games once. I don't know if I downloaded League of Legends or something like that, and I was like, click, 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 click. I'm like, I don't know what the... I know where it came from. I know it kind of came from... The whole MOBA thing sort of came from Warcraft 3. It was like a mod for Warcraft 3 or something, and blah, blah, and whatever. And now there's, back in the before times, there were stadiums of 80,000 people who were, cheering while people just click, 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 which is fine. But for me, I like video games fine, but I'm not I don't understand MOBAs, and I don't really, and I've seen a bunch of different projects that have cropped up in the past. They're like, oh yeah, it's basically a MOBA, but it's a miniatures game, and I'm always like, so. I think it's the gameplay style to me that makes me not particularly interested. But I'm hoping it turns out well for him. Finally got A Billion Suns the other day. I've been slowly going through it between samples at work. Nice. Yeah, like I said, I'm not a big ship combat guy, but I'm glad that Osprey is kind of, because I know there are people that are ship combat people, and Battlefleet Gothic is no longer around and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that they kind of picked that up. You know what I mean? Putty is intended to be overfilled and sanded. Yeah. Make sprue goo. Yeah, I've been working on that, and it's not doing what I want it to do particularly. So I think I have to add a lot more goo. No, I have to add a lot more sprue to my goo. But I have been working on a bottle of that. Vallejo Metal Color line has a good paint and is the best line of metallic acrylics available currently. But a lot of people mentioned that Metal Color stuff from Vallejo, but that's alcohol based, isn't it? I think that's one of the reasons why I've never been a big fan, is that it seems like it's outside of, I'd have to use it and clean things differently, and just it's an alcohol-based acrylic as opposed to the stuff that I like to use, which is the Vallejo Metallic Air, which is not alcohol-based. It's just regular, normal, paint. But yeah, I have heard very good things about the Metal Color line. But like I said, I don't, just the fact that there's alcohol in it makes me a little bit less interested. I'm starting a Nurgle Blood Bowl team, so I'm spending today practicing making tentacles out of milliput. Nice. Let's see here. Humbrol model filler is pretty good for filling, not particularly drillable though. I've never seen shrinkage. I've never heard of. I know Humbrol as a company. I didn't know they made model filler. Interesting. Let's see here. +1 for sprue goo. Just have to be patient. Let it dry fully before sanding. Yeah, like I said, I don't think I've added enough sprue to my goo yet. So there's that. Oh yes, that time that Uncle Adam blew up a factory from the shack. I had nothing to do with it. They did put a big hole in the roof. Just wait till the diapers get loaded. See, that's not what happens at the factory. They get built there, but then they get used elsewhere. But yeah, it was because there's like I said, there's all these particles of this super fine paper dust floating around in the air, and then you get a spark, and then it makes it's surprising when they explain it to me. I'm like, really? And they're like, oh yeah, no, it's the thing. I'm like, all right. It's kind of like I remember seeing, was it Mr. Wizard? Is that the guy? He was it's a really long time ago, and he had a show on in the 50s or 60s, and then he had a show on again in Nickelodeon in the 80s or 90s. I think it was Mr. Wizard. And I remember one time they did this experiment where they took a coffee can, a paint can that didn't have any paint in it. It had never had paint in it. And they drilled a hole in the bottom, and they put a bunch of flour in there, and they put a hose to the hole in the bottom, and then they put like a candle, I think, in there, and they put the top on it, and he just blew in there so that it basically caused all the flour to, like, disperse into the air within the can, and then the top of the can blew off. And flour is not flammable unless, it becomes particulate like that. And so, yeah, it was interesting. Saint City Riot. You should watch the new video from 50 Miniatures. He talks about Stargrave. Yeah, actually, Vince let me know that 52 Miniatures had done a video about Stargrave, and that he'd mentioned that he'd heard about Stargrave from the Every Other Sunday show, and it was actually like he had like some footage of him like watching the Every Other Sunday show on his laptop. It was he does really nice work. The 52 Miniatures. It's very kind of dramatic, sort of documentary style kind of filmmaking, which is very cool. Any suggestions on how one could paint up a poxwalkers so they're not so stupid and insipid looking? Put putty over their faces. It's the faces with those poxwalkers that I kind of don't really like. Everything else is fine, but their faces look stupid, and that's what I don't like. Just take some green stuff and just go. That's a good question. Otherwise, again, replace the heads. Something. That's the best thing I can think of. Let's see here. Our cats are freaking out over bugs flying around our window screens last night. Yeah, our cats don't seem crazy interested in bugs. Described as a MOBA and my brain shut off. Say on, brother. Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope it does well. And I'm sure that there's probably a group of people out there who are like, oh, it's a tabletop version of a MOBA, you say? I like MOBAs, and then that's great. Works out. But I don't know. I've watched a little bit of footage of it and just been like, it's just not for me. Zona Alpha for the win. Indeed. Thank you for a previous video. Uncle Admit forced me to check out Osprey's games, and I love Zona Alpha. Yeah, I did get a little break yesterday, and I did do a little bit of modeling. And by modeling, I mean I took some metal models that I bought from Eureka Miniatures that are like basically soldiers in like mop gear, which is like they're covered and they got the goggles and all that stuff. And it's kind of like NBC gear or nuclear, biological, chemical, but I think it's Russian. Anyway, so those are all metal models, and they're predominantly all one piece, and they're fine. But they all have that thing that drives me nuts, which is they have an integrated base, So I had to clip that all away because I don't like integrated bases like that. So I had to clip that all away with my clippers, which is not the easiest of things to do with metal miniatures, and it's not great for your clippers, but whatever, it works. So I clipped all that stuff away and glued them to a base, and I got about that far, and then I had to do other stuff and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to be adding a group of those types of soldiers to my slowly growing Zona Alpha group. I currently have a group of cultists that are finished and painted, and then I have a group of military zombies that are done. You might have seen some of those folks. Well, the military, when I did the video about indie games a couple weeks ago, the thumbnail has got some of my Zona Alpha cultists, which are from Anvil Industry out of the UK, and then my zombie military guys are a mixture of Mantic zombies with some old miniatures from a company called Defiant, which I think has gone out of business. But yeah, it's fun. Let's see here. Vallejo metal color line is acrylic. It's acrylic, but I think it's alcohol based. Metal color is water-based. Liquid metal is alcohol. Maybe I'm thinking something different then. I use the metal color just like acrylic works fine. Like I said, the only stuff I've ever used is the Vallejo model metallic air, and I really, really like it. Only the liquid gold / silver is interesting. Yeah, I've never seen, I've seen pictures of it, but I've never seen the stuff like in a local store, the metal, or the metal color, and I should try to find it, I suppose. How's your week been? Still, pandemic. I got my shot, my second shot, not this past Thursday, but the Thursday before. Yeah. And those of you who watch on Twitch, I did not stream on Twitch, not this past Friday, but the Friday before, because I was like, I got the second shot on Thursday, and I felt fine Thursday night, and then Friday I was just like, ugh. I felt, yeah, I woke up bad on Friday, and then it was basically just muscle aches like everywhere. I didn't have any other kind of like, some people would get sometimes headaches. Some people get nothing. Everything's fine. My mom got both her shots and had literally, other than her arm hurt, nothing was wrong. But with mine, I had these pretty rough muscle aches, and I was like, I don't know that I can sit on a bar stool and hunch over my hobby desk and paint for 3 hours on Friday. So that's why I didn't do it. But yeah, I'm fine now. Everything's great. So let's see. Supposedly GW is playing shenanigans with vendors and box quantities. I've been trying to build the same Necron Ghost Doom arc for almost a month. I only get a chance to work on models when someone goes to sleep. I wind up falling asleep with the box in my lap. GW's been... I don't know that they're playing shenanigans. I think that they are dancing as fast as they can. They have had a lot of production issues because of the pandemic, because of lockdown. Like, they can't have their factories at full capacity because, well, their factory... they can't have their factory in Nottingham at full capacity because of lockdown, and I think that's maybe just getting lifted now. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago. There was some rumors that Cursed City, that there was a production problem and that one of the molds potentially got ruined or damaged or whatever, and so. Yeah, like, I'm sure they would love to be able to ship out as much product as people would buy and take a lot of money for that. Obviously, everybody would. But lately, like, I've got a friend who's a store owner, and he's like, I order something from them, and I see it maybe in 5 to 6 weeks. And everything is just kind of behind right now. And again, it's predominantly all pandemic, so. So there's that. Let's see here. Spent my morning building up the base for a Gorgon for Warcry. Used Luke's APS modeling compound for the first time, and it works great. I don't have any of Luke's compound, although I think that now you can get the stuff in the U.S. a lot easier than you used to be able to, because he has some sort of distributor in the U.S. I did buy some modeling compound on Amazon, which I have not had a chance to use yet, but I do want to give it a try. Ship combat. Have you tried EVE Online? Ooh, like way in the early days of EVE Online, I played it for like a couple of days, and I was like, this is not for me. I know a lot of people really love it, but it was not for me. Let's see. What brand was your vaccine? I got the Moderna. All up ins. Yeah, it's a... I think my mom got Pfizer, and I think maybe my wife did too. I think I might be the only Moderna nerd. If you are impressed with Vallejo Model Air Metallic, then you'll be blown away with the Vallejo Metal Color Paints. They are much better. I'll have to take a look, I guess, if I can find them someplace. Got my second shot on Thursday. Couldn't sleep, chills burning up. Took Tylenol Friday morning. It really helped. Yeah, I was taking... not ibuprofen, acetaminophen, which I guess is kind of technically Tylenol, isn't it? So yeah, but yeah, that worked out. Are there going to be a starship for Stargrave, like Starship Rules? I don't think so. I don't know that they would go that direction. I mean, I guess technically you could use A Billion Suns if you wanted to. I mean, it's the same company, so you could, I guess. But generally, yeah, no. Let's see here. Vallejo Metal Color is aimed at the serious scale modelers rather than the mini painters. It's more realistic finishes. Interesting. More to get sick from shot than intended to prevent. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I'm getting into Infinity. The models work for Stargrave. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I could see, especially some of the newer Infinity models, I could definitely see some of the newer Infinity models getting good use in a lot of different sci-fi skirmish games. And the reason I say the newer ones is because the newer ones are generally fewer parts, from what I understand, in Infinity. Some of the older models back 5 years ago were way too many parts for a metal model, in my opinion. Like, I put together a metal model from Infinity that was at least a dozen parts for a 28 millimeter guy, if not more. I nearly died. Yeah, it was troublesome. Yeah, I really did not dig it. So let's see here. We're going to do that. But yeah, I don't know. It's the early models were so many parts, and they were really difficult to build. But the newer ones, they've tried to figure out how to make them as few parts as possible, but still have them be dynamic and cool sculpts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. Absolutely. Headed to Green Bay today for a board exam. Any game store recs? The only game store that I know of in Green Bay is Gnome Games. They have, I think, two? Is there two Gnome Games locations in Green Bay? I don't know if there's any other green... Oh, well, technically in De Pere, which is like a little tiny offshoot, there's a Warhammer store. That's the closest Warhammer store to me now, which is still 45 minutes away. But up until literally last year, there was no Warhammer store within 2-hour drive almost. So yeah, definitely. I could see there being... Yeah, I could see... Yeah, Gnome Games has got a decent selection of stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out. I found out my local pharmacy can do the vaccine by appointment. Oh, that's a good thing. Let's see here. I like the Infinity aesthetic, but I don't like metal models. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a personal preference. Some people love them, some people don't like them. I am fine with them when they're fewer parts. And that's the big thing, is that when there's a lot of parts, that's problematic. But when there are fewer parts, it's fine. Let's see here. After initial irritation for Cursed City, this lets me focus on other armies I haven't finished. It's all good. You know, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And again, who knows? They might come back later on and be like, okay, well, we've got more now available because they got things fixed or whatever the problem was, or, there's all, who knows? The biggest issue right now, in my opinion, is that they're being really quiet about it. And that, I think, is a little dumb. I think that they need to say, look, this is what happened, or this is why we're in this situation. They're doing that a little bit right now. Like, they basically told everybody, look, we're not doing any more pre-orders the rest of April. We're going to start our pre-orders again in May because we're really behind and there's trouble and blah, 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 and, pandemic and all that stuff. So there's that. But it's just one of those situations where, if they would have just said, look, this is the problem, I don't know. It does seem weird. So I got in on the Nick starter for Stargrave and got the crew box. I'm also planning to use the minis from Blackstone Fortress and the Rogue Trader Kill Team box. See, that's the thing that I like about these kind of mini agnostic games. I love the fact that you can, like Zona Alpha that we were talking about before, you can use whatever the heck kind of models you want and have a really kind of fun, kind of creative aspect to it. That's one of the things I like about Stargrave. Yeah, sure, you can buy the models that they sell for this, but you can also customize them as well. I'm going to be eventually using the models for Stargrave. Because, like I said, I ordered there's 3 different sets at launch. There's the Mercs, the Crew, and the Troopers, I believe. But I also have a bunch of other kit-bashed models for sci-fi stuff already finished that I could also just repurpose and use in this game. I did a couple different war bands for Star Breach, which is within arm's reach. So, Star Breach from Slow Death Games is also a sci-fi skirmish game that you might be interested in checking out as well. Both of them have got a campaign mode. I would say Stargrave's campaign is maybe a little bit more straightforward, maybe a little. I don't know, maybe not. But Star Breach has this kind of great thing where they have all these different army lists for stuff, and you're like, those are technically Jedi, or that's, so you can. Starbreach has got a bunch of lists, and then you can obviously go, those are Tau. So you already know, rather than having to sit down and say, oh, I got to build this custom, or I got to, kit bash a bunch of stuff, Like, they don't call them Tau, but as you read through it, you're like, those are Tau, and those are, Eldar and stuff like that. But they're also Star Wars stuff. There's all kinds of different stuff. Plus, there's also factions that are, there are factions that are just tropes, like space pirates and stuff like that and whatever. But it allows you to just be able to go look at the army lists and go, I can use my Star Wars models, Star Wars Legion models for this, or I can use my Imperial Guard for this, because they've kind of made it simpler. Stargrave doesn't particularly have factions. You build a crew, and then you have different types of like crew and your captain and your kind of first mate, and it's not as faction based. It's a little, honestly, this is a little bit more RPG. Like, you're not actually having to say, well, then I go talk to the tavern owner and I press him for information. It's not that kind of RPG. It's more like computer game RPG, where you're like, okay, now I get to up my stats in between game, when you're in your campaign thing, and that kind of stuff. And you've got more different skills that you can tweak, and it's not like 40K or Age of Sigmar, where they're like, well, this model does this. It's a little bit more customizable, but it reminds me a bit of RPG type stuff, which is cool, which I think is neat. With 3D printing, I can see an increasing space in the market for games to use with generic minis. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. 3D printing stuff. I finally received my Elgu Saturn in the mail. I had, lately I've been talking about how I wanted to get into a resin printer, and the one that I wanted is an Elgu Saturn, and you can never get them. Scalpers always buy them first and then raise the price $300 and this and that and the other thing. Well, long story short is I finally got one. The people from Elgu sent me a message and said, hey, we just released some onto AliExpress. Here's the link. So, because I told them I didn't want one for free, I wanted to buy one. I didn't want to, be beholden to them for a $500 machine and then have to make a bunch of videos or doing. So I was just like, I want to buy one. I just want to get one before the scalpers do. Is there any way that we can figure out a way that I could do that? Can I just buy one directly from you, the manufacturer? And they're like, no. As it turns out, you can't. I don't know why, but I got an email like at 10:30 at night saying, go to this link on AliExpress, and I bought one, and it showed up. So, but I have not yet been able to get it set up and ready to go yet. But I'm super looking forward to it, because I'm really looking forward to just being able to, like, My Mini Factory. If you've got a 3D printer, you need to check out My Mini Factory, because it's just like, you're like, oh, I want to print and paint a really fun, cool robot. And you just go to that website, just type in robot, and you see all the different stuff. And then you buy a robot STL for like $5 or something like that, or maybe more, maybe less. And it's just a great thing versus kind of hunting around all the different Patreons out there. You can just hit this database and go, I want to see this. And it's way better than Thingiverse. Like, Thingiverse is basically, I think, all free stuff, but you kind of get what you pay for. So, My Mini Factory is really cool. I got a bunch of cool demons from that website recently that I had those go up on Instagram because I was painting demons and stuff for a while, and that was very cool. So, tip for chat: everything is limited edition. PDFs, technically not limited edition. I mean, if you decide to eventually say I'm going to turn it off, then it's limited. But they can sell as many as they can download, and I think that's the good thing. Part of why I got Cursed City was for the zombies that everyone hates. They're just different in a clever way. See, and that's the thing. You're right. A lot of people don't like the zombies. I'm not a big fan of those tombstones in their back, but there are people out there going to be like, I really love that because they're different than everybody else's, and I think that's cool. I still want to figure out if there's something I can put on their backs instead. I don't know what. TVs, like really big tube TVs. If I could find, like, I don't know, I got to 3D print something probably, but that'd be sort of funny. I don't know why, but it would be. Stargrave is the sci-fi game I wanted for a few decades. Joe McCullough is a total star. He is. Between Frostgrave, Rangers of Shadow Deep, now Stargrave, he's been knocking it out of the park, as they say. Absolutely. We've been having a blast playing a lot of Frostgrave at our FLGS, and at least one other guy that's also pre-ordered Stargrave, so we'll probably try it out soon. Yeah, one of the big differences I noticed in reading through the rules in Stargrave versus Frostgrave is that when you're building your Frostgrave, like, treasure hunting warband or whatever. You've got your wizard, and then you have your apprentice, who is basically just backup wizard. Like if you've decided your wizard is predominantly, elementalist and stuff like that, your backup wizard is also elementalist or also necromancy or, whatever, that kind of thing. With Stargrave, there's a lot more customization. Your captain can be like, this particular archetype, and then your first mate or whatever can be something totally different, and it's not just like a backup of your whatever. So I kind of like that. There's a lot more customization. Like there's some people have said, oh, you guys just took Frostgrave and made it sci-fi. And like, number one, I'm like, well, I think that's cool. I'm fine with that, don't get me wrong. But B, it's not just a one-to-one. We just kind of did a copy paste, or a find and replace, and took out skeleton and put in robot or whatever. It's using a lot of the same engine, sure. Like there's a lot of the same dice rolls and things like that. You're still using D20s and all that jazz or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool. I know that there have been some people online who are angry because it wasn't a completely different game. But I'm like, a lot of people didn't want a completely different game. They just wanted a sci-fi version of Frostgrave. You know what I mean? So, but it still is different. Hey, the kind GM, how you doing? First time catching the stream live? Good to have you. I was having a discussion with my gaming group last week, and some of the guys believe the GW will go into 3D printable files sooner than later. I am not so sure about that. Yeah, I don't think so either. I really don't. I don't think that they're going to be interested in going down that route. The only thing that could change my mind, little tiny bit, is the pandemic. It's real easy to get STLs out to people in the middle of a pandemic because you don't have to worry about shipping and factories and boats and ports and all that stuff. We just need to keep the internet running, and then boom, there you go. So there's that. But yeah, I don't see them wanting to. They just built a new factory, like within the last several years. I think since 8th, they've built a new factory. So it seems unlikely that they would go down that road. If anything, I could see it being something for very specific models, almost like an offshoot of Forge World. Like if they decided, look, we're going to make these things that you can buy. For them, the trick is it would be almost a loss leader. And here's why. STLs are almost impossible to copy protect in any way, right? Like if you buy a PDF from Wargame Vault, the people who produce the PDF can, if they want to, make it so that at the bottom of every page in the PDF, your email will be there. So it's what they call a watermarked PDF, meaning that if I buy the PDF and now it has my email at the bottom of every page, I am slightly less likely to just throw it onto, Pirate Bay or whatever, because then my email is going to be all over it. Now, that can be probably stripped away. Anything that you do on the internet can be broken by a hacker. I get that. But for the most part, your average Joe is going to be like, oh, my name's on this. I better not share it out like a jerk. I have not seen anything quite like that for STLs. So if there's no kind of copy protection, I get the feeling that GW is going to be a little bit less likely to go down that road. But I could see them at some point going, look, here's like some cool terrain thing we made, like some one-off stuff or something. It's a potential, but I doubt that they'll go that way as a business model at any time in the future. So, which is, well, it is what it is, but... Let's see here. Why the Elegoo Saturn and not the Mars 2 Pro? Isn't detail in the Mars better versus the Saturn's larger size? I don't know. My friend Matt from Game 4 Matt from the Game 4 podcast, he has the Saturn, and so I was like, well, I want the Saturn as well, because then I can ask him questions, because then he's already figured it out. Yeah, that's a big part of it, honestly. And the bigger size thing is something I'm looking for. He printed me a whole bunch of stuff off of his Saturn. I really like the quality, so I was like, this is good for me, and also larger screen size, so larger potential build volume. So yeah, that's why I picked that one. Are Infinity models still metal? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Let's see. The next Joe McCullough rule set from Osprey is Skirmish Napoleonics with paranormal monsters. Sounds good to me. Sounds kind of a little bit like, just a scotch, a little bit like Dracula's America, which I love the concept of. I want to read a novel about Dracula's America. For some reason, I wasn't that interested in playing it. The book was gorgeous, really well designed. I really liked the visuals of it and everything like that. And I love the idea. But there was something about it that I was just like, I don't see myself. I think it's partially, to be perfectly honest, it's partially because I just don't already have a bunch of models that will fit with that, or any models that will fit with that. So that was enough of a, I don't want to say paradigm shift. That's not the right word. It's enough of a not attitude. I don't know. Like sci-fi, like I can use the same models for this game as I can use for this one, right? Okay, so both of these sci-fi, models, that's great. When they decide to kind of go off in a different direction, that's when sometimes this is a little bit more difficult. Not always. Sometimes it's not so bad at all. But finding like cowboy, also I'm not a super huge cowboy fan, so it's like kind of cowboy times, but there's also vampires and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I think it was the modeling opportunities for me that kind of put me off a little bit out of that. But I loved the concept of Dracula's America, and I, like I said, would have easily read a novel about it. For those of you who don't know, Dracula's America was a game that came out from Osprey a couple of years back, skirmish game. Dracula gets chased out of Europe, if I remember correctly, so he comes to America, where he, long story short, I think kills Lincoln and enthralls Congress, and then becomes president for life, but he's Dracula, so that'll be, for a while. And so he kind of just basically takes over America. And so you have like lawmen who are, basically kind of been turned, and they are, enforcing his will. Then you have other like people who are trying to stop them, and then there's like, werewolves and vampires and all kinds of crazy crap going on. But it's all going on like in the late 1800s. So yeah. Anyway, interesting story and everything like that. I think for me it was the modeling opportunities, that and the terrain and stuff like that. I didn't like. I guess if I played Malifaux more, I probably would have had more terrain that would have fit too. So yeah, I think that's a big issue for me. Let's see here. Hey Malev, how you doing? Did people not read the lore for the zombies and why they were designed the way they were? I mean, I get the concept. I know what they're, but I just don't like the look of it. You know what I mean? So I was just kind of like, it's just not for me. But I know there's people that do like it, and that's cool. I still think it would be fun. I had kicked around the idea of actually, one of the ideas instead of the TVs, because that'd be hard to find actually, but like barrels. Like if you wanted to make them almost like radioactive looking, and they've got like a barrel of like toxic waste on their back and something like that. That could be like a cool modification too. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Does anyone use Game of Thrones minis for other games? I don't know. I know that they're on round bases, even though you put them in those rectangular trays. That, I think, is the smart move in this day and age. They've done that. Conquest from Parabellum did that. It's a rank and flank style game, but rather than putting my models on square bases, I will then instead put my models on round bases, but then put them in trays that have holes. And the big benefit to that is twofold. Number one, you can use the models in other types of skirmish games, or if you look at like what Conquest is doing, Conquest, Parabellum, they're making their own skirmish game to use their own models, but then you just take them out of the trays and then just use them as a normal skirmish game, which is smart. But the other big benefit to it is that when you are putting these models into the trays, you can turn them so that this guy's spear is not poking this guy in the back. You know what I mean? You can turn him a little bit, and now it's not quite. Whereas that was always an issue with, back in the day, Warhammer Fantasy, is that you would put all your little square people into your trays, but you knew, well, this guy always has to be in front because his spear pokes out so far, he's always going to be jabbing somebody else in the back. So I got to put him here, but that means I got to put this guy here, and it's like a puzzle every time. Whereas when you put him on round bases, you can be like, oh, this guy doesn't quite. Oh, there he goes. And you just turn him a little bit, and then he fits, and it's fine. So yeah, there's that. But as far as the Game of Thrones stuff, like I know Sam likes the game and has painted a bunch of this stuff. I don't know of anybody who's using. The minis are a little bigger, aren't they? They're at least 32, if not 35, if not maybe even 40. I know that they're physically larger. At least they seem to be. Osprey just posted a solo AI for Stargrave. Yeah, I'd heard about that. Yeah, they're gonna be releasing that as a PDF shortly after the launch of the actual physical book. D20s put me off. Star Breach was designed with 2d6 to mitigate the swinginess of D20. I don't mind D20s. I like D20s actually a good deal. But, I like kind of randomness and swinginess in my miniature games. "3D printers at GW stores. That'd be an interesting use to their retail space back rooms." Yeah, that seems like a lot of trouble. I don't see it. "I see GW doing print on demand before they do STL sales." I mean, that's a possibility, I guess. It could be a situation. I mean, they've done those made-to-order things before, where they're like, oh, hey, this next 2 weeks you can buy this model or this model or this model, and we'll crank them out and send them to you. But we're only working on them those 2 weeks, so it's like a pre-order thing. I mean, it's not a Kickstarter, but, it's basically you're prepaying, and then they'll make them. That's what their made-to-order system is. And they kind of pick different models. It would be interesting if they started getting into 3D printing where they were like, look, we've got all this stuff. You say you want it. We print one and we ship it to you. And it's not just like a 2-week thing. We can crank it out whenever. I could also see that getting way behind if it gets real popular because 3D printing has a specific kind of learning curve to it. It also has a specific kind of time situation. 3D printing is not necessarily great for manufacturing. One-off manufacturing, it's awesome. Miniatures that you want to build, awesome. When you need to make 7,000 of this guy, 3D printing is way slower than it is to just get the mold made and then crank it out on a press. You know what I mean? So there's that too. "The math in Star Breach is both fun and a chore. I find calculating D20 in Frostgrave ROST a bit easier." Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my background. Like when I started, when I first started getting into nerd games, I started in D&D, and I've just always liked D20s. I liked using D20s in the Star Wars miniatures game that Wizards of the Coast produced. The little pre-painted Star Wars dudes that came like in the little. You didn't know what you were gonna get in the box. You got like 7 guys. It was like HeroClix, but it was made by Wizards of the Coast, and it was all Star Wars stuff, and there was no clickiness on the bases. There was nothing. Anyway, I used to play the heck out of that, and that was all D20 based. It was a lot of fun. My second cousin named Lee, he rolled ones on D20s so frequently that eventually, amongst our gaming group, if you rolled a 1 on a D20, it was just called rolling a Lee. So I eventually did want to get him. They're really hard. I wanted to get him a custom-made D20, like where they could replace the 1 with just the word Lee, but it didn't work out. I don't think that Chessex even does D20s. Maybe they might, but at the time, I don't think they did. They were only doing D6s. "I'd love it if GW put out their print rules. White Dwarf as print on demand or gasp free. I'm still buying the minis." Yeah, I mean, I've talked about that relatively recently about why some companies produce their rules for free and why some don't. And they're certainly in the category that some don't. Like, these guys aren't going to really produce this for free because A, it's awful thick, and B, this is the whole package. There's this other company that's working with them that's making some miniatures, but they're not really selling a miniatures line. When you're looking at a game like Mythos from War Cradle, that is a game where you can download the rules for free, because they want you to buy the miniatures. There's plenty of companies that have done that where they're like, we really want you to buy the miniatures, so we'll sell you the book if you want one, if you want like a printed version, but we'll also give you the rules for free via PDF if you want that too. And a lot of people, and I said this in the video, use that almost as like a try before you buy sort of situation. I'm going to download the rules for this, read it over, go, I like this is cool. Okay, now I'll buy not just the miniatures, but maybe also the book because I like having printed stuff in my hands. I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of having my rules on a PDF because I've got an iPad and it's great and I can do a keyword search and all kinds of stuff like that. But I know that not everybody likes that, so. DRM STLs. I mean, I could see something going in that direction eventually if they haven't already, but I think that a lot of people, just like with because there were password protected PDFs, but they were janky. like it was a situation of like the Adobe servers had to be up so that when you wanted to look at it, then but the fact that PDFs, you can look at them on your phone, you can look at them on your iPad, you can look at them on your laptop. They have to be available through so many different platforms. It just became a real problem. So the answer in that situation was to literally just put the email, like put a watermark on the PDF itself. So when you buy a PDF, a watermarked PDF from a company like Board Game Vault or Drive-Thru RPG or any of those kind of companies, they put your email like at the time when you buy it. They go cool, and then they just drop your email at the bottom of the page on every page in the thing, and then that's the version you email or you receive. You receive a link via email, and then you download it. With STLs, yeah, there's so many different types of slicers. I don't know. There is something about watermarking STLs, but it's dubious at best. Yeah, I can see that too. GW print on demand for discontinued items. That's possible. Forge World seem to be using 3D printing to make some of their mold masters, so GW have some experience in low volume 3D printing at least. More and more companies are starting to figure out or do things where they can literally they'll 3D print the mold masters and then go from there. That's the way that most of them are done. But yeah, you're starting to see more companies like in the realm of like metal and resin and that kind of stuff do that, and it works out nice. I'd like to see 3D print on demand for Forge World models. Some of them always seem out of stock. Yeah, that's true. I can see that. Has anyone else picked up the new fantasy anthology Appendix N? It's a really cool collection of old sword and sorcery. I've never even heard of it. Interesting. How cool would it be to get a copy of old Hammer supplements like the Ancient Lost and Damned Chaos supplement? It would just be awesome just for the John Blanche artwork. Yeah, no, I can understand that. Yeah. Like, it was really cool, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago when I was I think it was at Adepticon, and in the Forge World /GW booth, they had made reprints of original, like, first edition 40K Rogue Trader, like full-blown, full-color, hardcover like that thick. And I was like, because I had never played that game, or even, I had seen the book someplace, but I don't remember, but now I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy that. So I bought that, and then like the next year, then they came out with that crazy Chaos supplement. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. And I bought that too. And that was hysterical. There's just so many, I just remember then the night maybe that I bought it, we were back in the hotel room, and it was me and my friend Eric. We usually room together at Adepticon, and I'm just going through and reading a bunch of the character creation tables and all kinds of stuff for all this kind of crazy chaos stuff, and oh god, and we were kind of punchy because it was late and we were tired and we probably had a couple of cocktails, but god, we both just laughed and laughed. So that old 35, 40-year-old book stuff, they have done some reprints on some of that stuff, and I do wish that they would do more of them, but I understand that it's probably not necessarily... There's some of them that they would put out there that some people would be super jazzed by, and other people would be like, yeah, I don't... So they might not sell as well, but... Let's see here. How would you rate Dead Zone in comparison to Stargrave as far as narrative gameplay? I've never played... I've never played Dead Zone narratively. I've played Dead Zone a couple of times. I don't know if I've even played the new version. No, I haven't. I've only played the original version of Dead Zone, and it was always just one-off games. So I don't really know anything about the narrative aspect of it. And they've come out with a new edition several years ago, and I have the book, but I've not actually even played it since. So I've used the terrain a bunch for a lot of other stuff, but I haven't actually played the new version of that. So there's that. GW is interested in manufacturing the best toys they can make. It's true. It's true. What about 3D printers being connected to the internet so only that printer could use the file? The only issue I could see is that, well, one of the first issues I could see is what happens if your internet goes down while you're printing, and then, because those prints can take a long time, and I don't know, it's a good question. Malev says, unrelated, but Brutal Quest is awesome. Brutal Quest is awesome. Planet 28, I've talked about Planet 28 in the past. That's a sci-fi game from Mammoth Miniatures, from Nick. who I swear I saw here in the chat. Yep, down there. Yep, Nick Evans. And Brutal Quest is the new version. It's based off of Planet 28 a bit, but it's more fantasy-based. It's also something you can get available at Wargame Vault. But you can also, I think, get it from Mammoth Miniatures as well. But yeah. 5 parsecs from home is awesome. My wife even wants to try it. Nice. That's very cool. Speaking of GW recycling old stuff, how is them putting White Dwarf covers on T-shirts? That seems too nerdy even for me. Probably because the T-shirts are way easier to print on demand. Like the merch bunker, which it'll pop up over here again at some point. But the shirts that I sell are print on demand, and that's the quality's good and it's relatively simple on my end, and I'm sure they're doing the same thing. They're probably not even doing it themselves. They might be licensing it through some other company. They're probably advertising it. That might be part of the deal, but they've probably worked out some sort of deal, and they're like, well, if people want to buy them, because here's the thing: putting up the artwork, getting a bunch of shirts printed and then putting them someplace in stock and then hoping people buy them and then shipping them out and all that jazz, that's an upfront investment. Uploading a graphic to a place like Teespring or Cafe Press or Printful or any one of those places, and then people buy it or they don't, that's upfront cost way less, which is why that kind of print on demand stuff is nice. The downside is the profit margin is lower. So when you've got people like Miniac, Scott, like his shirts are all, I believe, being printed ahead of time. Like, I don't know if he's working with like a local company or somebody he finds online, but he gets them all printed, and then they sit on shelves in his basement, and then when you say, I want to buy a cool Miniac shirt, then he puts them in a baggie or whatever and ships them off, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with my thing, I upload a design, and then that company handles fulfillment, credit cards, chargebacks, all that jazz, and I don't have to mess with it. But he makes more per shirt than I do because of that. So yeah, that's the difference there. Like the first shirt that I ever sold I got printed locally and all that stuff, but I also didn't just want to have a pile of them. I did like a 3-week, like a pre-order, basically a prepay, so I knew exactly how many I needed. But since then, I've liked using this other service. Let's see here. Yeah, the 40K vintage supplement was Realms of Chaos, Slaves of Darkness. That's the one. Yep. Yeah, original copies go on eBay for $200 and up. Yeah, but I really liked the reprint. I really enjoyed it. We had a fun time reading it. It was one of those things where I'm like, it's so funny when people complain about models these days and stuff. And I'm like, if you look, this used to be like what you used to get in the 90s. Like, these are crazy silly looking in comparison to what we have today. It's just nuts. Yeah. I think 3D print on demand would be cheaper for GW than running Forge World, especially if they wanted their entire back catalog to be available. The issue is they'd have to go through and be able to convert those things to STLs. I don't think it's a one-to-one. Like, they obviously sculpt in the computer pretty much everything these days, but I don't know if you can just take that and just automatically go and we'll make an STL of it. The file that they make to get the very fancy 3D printed masters, I don't know it's just a normal bog standard STL that you and I could get and download and print on our, $200 or $300 or $400 or whatever resin printers. I think that they're a different format and stuff like that. So I don't know how difficult that is to change. That's just something I can think of that could be problematic. Speaking of the merch bunker, how did you go with changing yours to a new provider? Hasn't happened yet. I'm hoping to be able to do it sometime this summer after the secret project is ready to go. But yeah, that is the plan. The website changed. Like, the company name changed too. They used to be called Teespring. Now they're just called Spring or Creator Spring or something. I don't know. They keep sending me emails going, oh, we're changing this and tweaking that. And I'm like, great. It's kind of too little too late. Because I keep saying to them, cool, can I integrate this into my website? Or do I still have to send people directly to your store to be able to buy my product? And they're like, yeah, no, we don't have the integration. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm still going to leave soon. Print on demand is so easy nowadays. There are several people who make print on demand shirts that never touch their actual shirts. I always, if I'm going to do a shirt design, I always get a print of it first from the print on demand people before I release it, so I can see that it worked right and the colors are good and blah 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 and all that stuff. And then once it's done and I like it, then I'll be like, cool, I'll put it up. But yeah. Print on demand is also great for us little folks working out of their basement workshop. My Etsy store is taken off. Nice. Any quick bits of wisdom for tackling a backlog army? I generally just try to, like, pick 5 models and start working, and then just, you get them done, pick 5 more models and start working. I don't like to work on a single model at a time. I'm not good at it, and I just don't think it's a good idea for me. Different people, different folks, different strokes, whatever, but I generally find it's best to work, even if the models don't match. Like I painted 10 of those Cursed City skeletons recently. They all matched. I painted them on Twitch. It was fine. Now I'm painting on Twitch the Night Lady, the guy with the long beard that I thought was a tongue, and then I cut off his face and replaced it with a skull. Witch Hunter dude who's kind of tall, and the foppish guy with the pistol and the coat over his shoulders. Those 4, and then also the watch captain of the skeletons. That's the 5th model, and they're all totally different. So I'm still working on them in assembly line, but I'm like, okay, well, this guy's got boots. We'll paint his boots. Okay, can this color be used anyplace else on any of these other guys? Well, I could use it on this guy's gloves. Great. Next thing, and then you just kind of just hop around, but you're not just sitting and waiting for something to dry. That's the thing that slows you down when you paint one model at a time. Is you paint something and you have to wait for the pants to dry, especially if you use a lot of washes and other transparent colors, like I do. So there's that. Let's see. One could imagine small companies in the near future using resin printers the way GW used to use metal spin casters, having a big catalog they can make on demand. I mean, it's possible. Again, like I said, it's... So there was a company called Minuteman Miniatures that several years ago had a big booth at Gen Con where you could sit down in the booth and then they would scan your head with some sort of thing. I want to say it was a Kinect, like from the Xbox, and this piece of software. And they would go all the way around your head, scan it, and then they would get a scan of your head. And then they could take your head, and then they had a whole line of different models that they'd produced, and then you could say, I want to put my head on this guy. And then they would then print it and send it to you. And they had a line of people for 4 days at Gen Con, just signing up, I don't know what it was, 30, 40, 50 bucks a shot. And they basically, I believe, went under because they could barely ever actually get the stuff produced. And they had 20, I think, like really expensive printers. Like they weren't using like your normal LCD screen type resin printers. They were using like Formlabs, like Form 2s, which are $4,000 a piece and use lasers instead of LCD screens. And they were cranking basically 24 hours a day and still just couldn't get the volume out in time. So for a company like GW to be like, oh yeah, we're going to 3D print a bunch of stuff for people and on demand, they would have to buy hundreds of printers and then have hundreds of people, and then sure, there would be times when like numbers would be down and only maybe dozens of printers would be running, but there'd be other times when they'd be like, oh, there's a new model that we came out with that we finally found the file for, or we converted it, or we 3D scanned it, or whatever, some old thing that all of a sudden a whole bunch of people want. It gets on some Discord somewhere and it starts getting shared around and people are like, this is awesome. And now you've got 6,000 people who want this model. That's the issue, I think, right now, at least with 3D printing, is that it's great for a one-off prototype, but it's really tough for like, big quantities. Print on demand makes it possible to do small runs cheap enough to still make a profit. Yep, that's true. Let's see here. I didn't mean to imply that you never have touched the shirts you sell. Oh, no. I get that. More talking about some of the people whose sales 100K to 200K are just print on demand shops. Yeah, no, there's plenty. Like at any time, you will be, like on Facebook, you'll see some ad for a t-shirt and, like they use like Facebook's algorithm to figure out like what your last name is. And then they will be like, oh, and there's this shirt, it's got like your last name on it, and it says something really weird and stupid and specific or whatever. Like, oh, well, it's your last name and the month you were born, and so therefore you're a badass or something. And then people will buy it. I've seen them in the wild, but I see them on Facebook, and I'm like, who the hell makes this stuff? Well, there are people out there who are making a living doing it, So yeah. Ordered my Live, Laugh, Blood for the Blood God shirt last week. Can't wait to wear it in front of my wife and watch the head shakes. Nice. That's good to hear. 5 models in a batch is my limit too. Otherwise, it feels like a job. The highest I've gone, like I said, I think is 13, and that was when I was working on those Skaven, those plague monks. Generally, I do stick between 5 and 10. That's usually my kind of jam. Let's see here. Foreground tried that with Forgotten Realms, printing every mini. I think they gave up quickly because time per cast was still way slower than just using a mold. It's a great idea, though. Yeah, that's the issue, partially, is that it's just the time that it takes. Once, and I don't know if this will ever happen, maybe, I mean, eventually, someday, but someday, like, resin printers will, or whatever comes next, might be super crazy quick. Takes 5 minutes to make a model. Cool, that'll be awesome. Super great quality, 5 minutes, maybe not a lot of cleanup time. You don't have to worry about this, that, the other thing. I don't know. Some sort of process down the road. Like, honestly, if you would have told me in the early 2000s that 3D printers would cost $250 and they would be resin printers and they would have the quality for, like, I knew 3D printing was coming, but it was all FDM. It was all the filament and the little robot arm moving stuff around, and I knew what the quality was like on that, and I knew how much those things cost, and I knew they were going to get cheaper, and you were going to be able to pick them up at like places like Best Buy. I remember telling people in like 2005, probably 10 years you'll be able to go to Best Buy and buy a 3D printer, and it'll only cost like $600. I'm like, well, by 2015, you were able to buy a filament printer for like $150, and you were getting them at like, not Best Buy, Costco, like Sam's Club, stuff like that. And then resin was all, this kind of pie in the sky sort of thing. And now that's come down to a very reasonable price. The point is that speed is still the issue. And that's going to be kind of a tough nut to crack, I think. If a company were trying to make a mini U, they should make custom heads that would plug into a limited number of mass-produced bodies. This is how the Romans did with their custom statues. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, like they did. They had like, yeah, they would scan your head, and then they would just go and then drop it on, like you could be like, oh, I want it on this guy on horseback, or I want it on this like kind of chaos lord, or I want it on this military dude, or whatever. And but the issue was the printing. That was the biggest issue. I can handle 10 models max, but 5 always feels like the perfect amount for paint batches. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think everyone's got their own number. Some people are saying 3, some people are saying 10, some people are saying 5, but unless you're painting like a display piece, if you're working on a piece for competition or for just setting and like having on a shelf and making, then you're generally working on one very frequently. You're usually not working on multiple pieces. But when you're working for stuff for tabletop that you're going to game with, it's generally better to try to work not one at a time, because I feel in almost any situation it slows you down to some degree. Just completely just waiting for dry, or for washes to dry, or paints to dry, or anything along those lines. Seen those ceramics 3D printers that are using clay and such? I don't think I've seen those. I know that the folks at Shapeways, the ones that they use are not resin, I don't think. It's like a powder, and then this arm kind of goes across and smooths the powder down, and then laser burns a layer of powder, and then the arm goes across and smooths another layer of powder down, and then laser burns, and then it just keeps, and then eventually what happens is you have this hopper that's filled with powder and now finished stuff, and you take it out, and then you kind of shake out the parts, and then the rest of the powder that didn't get burned goes back into the system, and then it can be fired back into the machine again. There's a name for that version of 3D printing, and I forget what it's called. But it allows you to, like, you don't really have to, there's no supports, because you don't, the unburned powder kind of acts as a support, so you don't have to worry about supports, from what I understand. There's a name for it, and I can't think of what it is. But I know that Formlabs now makes a home version of that, but it's $20,000. But it's not just the printer, it's also the big dust hopper that you empty the parts out into, and that like reclaims the unburned dust and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Shapeways, speaking of how to not scale well. Yeah, unfortunately that's the case too. Yeah, absolutely. I know I ask this question every show, but do you find it exhausting being our industry's hobby sex symbol? I don't remember you asking that every episode, so, I appreciate it. I'm not, that's not the case, I don't think. But sure. Thanks for asking, though. Yeah, it was sort of weird. At one point, I was like, "3D printing is the far-flung future," and then one day I'm looking at one for sale in Barnes and Noble. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I agree. Like I remember going to Sam's Club when we used to have a Sam's Club membership. Like walking around, and all of a sudden you're just like looking at PlayStation games. Okay, that's great. And I'm like, 3D printers. When the yeah, it was crazy. You know where 3D would help GW? They could make the Deathcore STL files. Who doesn't want to fight a great unclean one with a shovel? I would tell you to look at Victoria Miniatures. They've got some models that are close along that are a lot like the Deathcore of Krieg. If anything, they're not nearly as skinny. Deathcore of Krieg, to my mind, have always been really skinny. Like they need to eat something, a little bit of something, just a little nosh. You know what I mean? But yeah, Victoria Miniatures has got some really cool models that remind me of Deathcore Krieg, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Depends on what I'm painting. 10 Skellies, no problem. 5 or less Stormcast, though. Sure, I can see that. Adam, you don't have a resin printer, right? Actually, I do. I have an Elegoo Saturn. It is sitting in the living room, still in the box. It showed up not Friday, but the Friday before. I have not yet had the time to put it together yet. What would it take for them to get you to buy in? As it turns out, partially it was water washable resin because I didn't want to have to use isopropyl alcohol, so water washable resin that works nicely, and I have built and painted models made with the Elegoo water washable resin, so I know that it's good quality. I like what I've gotten because my good friend Matt from the Game 4 podcast, he also has an Elegoo Saturn, and he uses the water washable resin, so I'm going in the exact same direction. Also, having a resource like Matt to say, hey, this is screwy, hey, what's going on? And he can say, this is how I fix that issue, or whatever, because he has the same printer, and it's going to be using the same material. Also, a bunch of the resin companies now, the companies that make the printers, are also now making curing stations, washing stations. Like, it used to be you had to figure out a way to get UV light all over these to kind of cure them. So there were people that were using the nail salon UV light things for the gel nails, or I don't know exactly what. But now all these companies, Anycubic, Elegoo, all those, are making these devices that you basically put next to your printer, and then you take the thing out, you put it in here, it washes it, and then you take that part out and you set it over here and you put it in this machine, it spins it around and shines light on it. And so it's becoming less of a problem as well. Another good tip that I got from somebody, I forget where, they suggest, I think it was somebody in the Every Other Sunday show, or it was somebody in the last Irregulars show. I think it was somebody in the last Irregulars live chat that I did, suggested silicone mats, because stuff doesn't really stick to silicone barely. So you get silicone mats for baking, and you put them under your printer, and then if you get goo that drops onto then it doesn't stick and get icky. I mean, it sort of does, but you can wipe it up way easier, whereas if it sticks to other stuff, it's real hard to get off. So anyway, that's part of what it is that headed me in that direction. And I hope to be able to set it all up and get rolling soonish. Sintering, is that what it's called? Interesting. Once had to assembly line 30 Gaunts and then 20 Gene Stealers in a week before a doubles tournament after my partner dropped out. It was not fun and many late nights. Yeah, that is I don't want to do that. Hey, will you be at the next Origins? I know that Origins is coming up in October. I don't know that I'll be at Origins in October. I would love to be at Origins next year if they have it in the normal June-ish time period and all that kind of stuff. But this year, because everybody's trying to have their conventions in October and stuff like that, I've got a couple different conventions I'm hoping to go to in October, and so adding a third is just not going to work out. One thing I'm excited for is how 3D printing might shift away from plastic. We might go full circle back to paper pulp minis. Interesting. The problem with the loose material can't actually be used over and over again. Need something like 50% virgin material every time. That's true. I did remember reading something about that. Like, yeah, you can't completely reuse it. You have to keep adding in new stuff, but the old stuff you just don't throw away. You know what I mean? So you're kind of blending it, from what I understand, which is part of why the Formlabs machine is expensive, because it's collecting the stuff that got used but didn't actually get burned, and then it's somehow mixing it internally when you had more stuff, and then I don't know. I remember watching a video about it, and I was like, wow, this is a big, and it's like easily 3 machines. There's the actual printer, there's the big dust thing, and then there's the thing that loads more dust into the cartridge or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And then I was like, huh. But this is for home, allegedly, right? And they're like, yeah, it's $20,000. I'm like, no, thank you. Battle Tech lances of about 4 models was a sweet spot for me. I could do about a lance a week. Nice. Yeah, you beat the scalpers. Yeah, I did. Like I said, the folks from Elgu sent me a link and said, hey, we've released more on AliExpress. Here's the link. And when I got there were 3 left, according to AliExpress's website. So I was like, and I bought it. And then I had some people in the chat be like, well, good luck getting it, but it did show up. So that's good. I mean, it wasn't as fast as, say, Amazon, but it was still pretty fast. So I was glad. I might have been talked to death on earlier episodes. Why do you think the community is not clamoring for more accountability on GW's side, considering false advertising and redacting post? I have no idea. I don't know. Last episode I talked about the Curse City stuff. I think that they need to let us know what's going on. I think it would be really nice if they did. It'd be helpful. As far as clamoring for more accountability, if you're angry about it, then don't buy their stuff anymore. Honestly, like if it's a situation where you don't trust a company anymore, you have to vote with your wallet. That's just straight up. We can sit here and tweet about it all day long or whatever and stuff, but at the end of the day, especially because they're such a big company, they're not beholden to us, they're beholden to their stockholders. So we can't get them to do anything that they don't want to do. They have to follow what the stockholders want. So I'm sure that there are plenty of people at Games Workshop that would love to tell us, Charlie dropped the mold on the ground, it got bent. I don't even know what the heck happened. Or we ran out of plastic, or whatever. I was just talking to my friend who owns the comic book store downtown, and he said that they haven't had backer boards and bags available. Like, you can't buy them, and they haven't been for months, and they probably won't be seeing any new backer boards and bags until maybe September or fall of this year. So if you're a comic book person who likes to take your comic books and then put them in a little baggie and a little backer board and stuff like that, they're out nearly worldwide from what I understand. So I'm like, I didn't realize that. That's crazy. Yeah, again, manufacturing, all these issues. I'm sure it's a situation of they thought things were going to go one way and then they didn't. And again, they need to be a little bit more clear about it, but it is what it is, If it makes you angry, don't buy their stuff anymore then. That's just the answer, frankly. I still prefer to cure my prints in water in the sun, but you live in Australia, which is, I think, closer to the sun. Pretty sure that's how it works. Here in Wisconsin, there's times when I'm like, yeah, that ain't going to work for me. I can't do that. Will you be at Dragonfall in October? That is one of the conventions I do hope to be able to get to. Yes. I just bought a used Anycubic Photon from a friend at work. He had it in a curing station, and he made it with a copy paper box and foil and UV LEDs. He threw that in for the printer, so I was sad. So yeah, that's kind of the way it used to have to be. You had to kind of make your own stuff. But now all those companies are like, well, we can produce a thing that does this and whatnot, and I seem to like that better. If you don't mind sharing, how much did the Elgu go for? It was a standard retail price. It was luckily what I was able to get it for, which is $500. I think. Did I have to pay shipping? I think I had to pay tax. I don't remember if I had to pay shipping or not. But if you buy it from a scalper on Amazon, they're $800. So don't buy it from a scalper on Amazon. Have you seen the new Diarchasm skeleton miniatures that are coming out? Look really good. No, I haven't. That's cool though. I'm glad to see it. Because I really love the skeletons, the Sepulchral Guard that they did for the original Shadespire, or was it the second one? Was it Night Vault? I don't remember. I think it was Shadespire. But yeah, those were really good skeletons, so I think that's cool. Let's see here. If you don't mind sharing... Oh, I already answered that. Sorry. My son just got interested in 40K, and we're enjoying learning to paint. What is a cost-effective rule set to play with? Don't want to buy loads of books. If you're interested in... If you're interested in 40K style stuff, meaning Space Marines and this and that and the other thing, one thing to look at is something called one-page rules. One-page rules, you can look them up on Google, and they have a lot of free or very, very inexpensive rule sets that are designed to kind of be, like, they don't say this is 40K, but you can look at it and go, this sort of seems like 40K. And they also have a fantasy version, which is kind of like, but I would start there, honestly. One-page rules has got some really decent stuff, and you can, like I said, you can either get it for free or cheap, depending on the version to some degree, because they have like a literal one-page rules, which is free, which is just both sides of a piece of paper, like 8.5 by 11 or whatever. But then they have a slightly deeper book that's maybe $5, but it's probably a PDF. So yeah, definitely. Let's see. I know people are frustrated with GW, but has the Cursed City thing cost anyone real money or just inconvenience? I have heard from some folks that stores like ordered it and then never got it. But I also have heard from... I know here in town there are easily, like, of the two stores that I know here in town, I am 90% sure that between the two of them, there are at least 5, 6, maybe 7 copies of it still here in town. So for all of the talk of it being sold out, people need to kind of check their local stores. And in some areas, very possibly sold out. I've got a friend who lives out in California, northwest-ish of LA, and he checked with his local stores, and it was totally all sold out. So I went to my local store, Flying Phoenix Games, and I said, hey, I'm going to buy this. And I bought it, and then I put it in a box, and then my wife shipped it to California to my friend, and then he sent me PayPal. And so, it's still out there in the wild. It's just you can't get it from the GW website anymore. That's just the way it works. But you'll still be able to find it in some places. But yeah. Sepigard was Shadespire. Yep, that's what I thought. I'm considering using a blender to make my own wash station. Since I'm using standard resin, that needs an alcohol wash. A blender? Yeah, maybe. It sounds fancy, but yeah. Facebook comments are deleted by companies all the time, including other people's comments. That's not a conspiracy, let alone illegal or misleading. If they weren't deleted, people like you would be bleeding. That almost rhymed. Did that rhyme? That might have rhymed. One-page rules, grimdark future. Yeah, that would be a good that would be a good start for if you want to go down that road. Let's see here. I've been on the OPR Discord for a while. They are some really nice folks. One-page rules. Duh. I'm thinking like OCR Bone Reapers, but I'm like, that's not right. OCR. Anyway, yeah. OPR is a great way. It's the best way to get started in grimdarking. I like that, grimdarking. That's fun. Yeah. Their models are really good. In fact, I highly recommend the Duchy of Vinci models from OPR. Yeah, the one-page rules folks not only produce rules, but they also produce a lot of STLs, and you can either buy them directly through places like My Mini Factory, like more of an a la carte situation, or you can support them, I think, on Patreon and then get access to the miniatures every month and all that kind of stuff, which is very cool. And yeah, they do have some, like, they have a definite style to them. I can look at an image and be like, I think that's from the same folks that do one-page rules, and I'm generally right. Like as I'm scrolling through stuff, let's say over on My Mini Factory, but some of them are very cool. Some of them are just the tiniest touch cartoony a little bit, but sometimes it's also the render. Sometimes you're like, yeah, the render looks maybe, but if you print it and look at it in 3D, it looks different. You know what I mean? So yeah, I have been interested in getting into that and checking out more of their stuff. They've got a bunch of different aliens that I think would be sort of fun for a project that I kind of want to do. And also some of those alien prints would also be great for Stargrave. So there's that too. Yeah. Captain Athenos says that my friendly local game store still has 12 copies of Cursed City. Yeah. Let's Let's see here. I've been looking, but I'm also not that hurt by it either. I'm not sure if I caught with that. Okay. My local store got like 13 and sold 13 within the week. Thankfully, one of them was mine. Yeah, it's just like, and this is interesting too. There are games out there that you might be like, I don't know anybody who plays that. But you go to some other part of the country, and that's the game that everybody plays. You know, like, I don't know anybody around here anymore that plays Privateer Press stuff, but there are certain parts of the country that you go that everyone's just like, yeah, no one really here plays 40K. Everybody plays, like, you know, Warmachine or whatever, and that kind of stuff, or everyone here plays this. Very frequently, it is because of a person. We used to call them alpha gamers, but I really don't like that term anymore. I like to just call them instigators. They're basically people who are like, or they're just advocates. They're like, I like this game, so I'm going to, you know, build and paint 2 forces, and I'm going to start teaching people at the local shop to play it, and then eventually someone's going to be like, oh, that's cool, and then they'll buy some, and then it will just kind of grow it, kind of, you know, grassroots, sort of organically, and that's very cool. But obviously there are games that are more popular than others in general, let's say countrywide, worldwide, whatever, however you want to gauge that. But yeah, it is a situation of, you know, there's always something someplace where you go walk into a shop and you're like, everyone here is playing Guild Ball. Do they even make that game anymore? You know, and it's interesting. So yeah. Crimson Court minis are beautiful. Yeah, they're really nice. I like them a lot. James Workshop promised me 100 pots of Screamer Pink. James Workshop. I like James Workshop. Have you ever magnetized your miniatures? I'm working on AdMech now. Fun and frustrating. I haven't done it for a long time, but I have in the past. When I was more into 40K, I would frequently magnetize sergeants, like for tactical Marines, where I would take basically from like this point at the shoulder. So there would be a magnet sunk into the torso, shoulder socket, whatever, anyway. And then I could swap out an entire arm. So this arm has got a plasma pistol and an arm and a shoulder pad. And then I would just take that whole arm off and then pop on another one that would have, I don't know, a can opener, remote control for the TV, whatever, you know, it's something else, power maul, something equally as useful. And I had friends who did it to the point where they would magnetize also the shoulder pads, so they didn't have to have 2 shoulder pads. They could just swap, like pop off the shoulder pad, pop off the arm, put on a new arm, and then put the original shoulder pad back on. That was more work than I wanted to go with. So I just decided I've got plenty of shoulder pads. It's fine. I could, you know. And I've also seen people even magnetize the wrists on TAC Marines, where like you take off this entire wrist and then pop on a new one, and it's got a different type of pistol, bolt pistol versus plasma pistol, whatever. I haven't done it for a long time, and it is kind of a pain in the butt. So go slowly and don't do it for your entire army, I guess is the point. Just do it for like sergeants and bosses and things like that if you need to swap a lot. It depends. You know, yeah, it's one of the reasons I kind of got out of army stuff and more competitive stuff is because of the constant, like, well, I need 6 of these guys, so I always have an option. Or I need to magnetize one guy so that he's literally just a bundle of parts stuck together by a magnetic field. And every time I use him on the table, you know, nearby people, like their laptop stops working. And so I don't know. That's troublesome. Gamer Zero, as in Patient Zero. Yeah, I could see that. Hey, Uncle Adam, you were right. I went to my local shop and they had a copy of Cursed City, so I'll be picking it up on Tuesday. Nice. Let's see. Instigators. Sounds similar to rabble rousers. A little bit of rabble rousing. I love the James Workshop character. I just wish that they got Matt Berry, who he's obviously based on, to play him. I don't think they have that kind of money, but yes, yes. What was his name? We were watching What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show. Jackie, when he decided to like leave because he owed Mark Hamill's character money or something crazy like that. He was like Jackie Daytona, human bartender. That's what he was. Man, I hope they make more of that show. If you've never watched What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, you definitely need to watch that. And then they've made, I think, 2 seasons now of the TV show. And I'm not a big TV fan these days, but God, that show is spectacular. It's basically kind of like a mockumentary, a little bit like The Office, except instead of it being in an office, it is a group of vampires who live together. Both the movie and the TV show are that, and this documentary group is like learning about their backgrounds and how they interact with each other and this and that and everything. But it's yeah, like the movie's all New Zealand, Taika Waititi and all that kind of stuff. It's great. And then the TV show is also spectacular as well. Jackie Daytona, there you go. Human Bartender. Isn't Cursed City a bit grindy and not so much fun? That I don't know. I guess it's personal preference. I really love the models, and so that's why I was glad to have it. And I put together and painted now 10 of the skeletons. You can see them on Twitch, or you can also see them. I posted actually yesterday on Instagram. I posted a bunch of pictures of the skeletons. And now I'm working on Twitch 4 of the heroes, and the skeleton boss, skeleton watch captain, skeleton assistant supervisor, whatever that guy's name is. If you're interested, I am on Twitch Monday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. That'll be tomorrow. But I also do Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time. So I either do a morning show or an evening show, depending on whether it's Monday or Friday. But yeah, come by twitch.tv/tabletopminions. You can watch me paint and yammer on for 3 hours at a clip, as opposed to this where I don't paint and only yammer on for 2 hours at a clip. So, does James Workshop still hang out with Matt Varnish? Oh, that's not a bad idea. Don't magnetize every mini in your army. Thinks over the fact that my future Soul Blight graveyard's ending at least 100 skeletons. Yeah, I can see that. Taika Waititi is a genius. It's true. Very true. Are you telling me that Jackie Daytona isn't just a human bartender? They have just started filming season 3. Good to hear. Yeah. My wife and I really enjoy that show. I can grab a blender for $15 or less. Then I just need some screen wire to separate the blades from the parts. I can scavenge what I need for free after I get the blender. I could see that. I had some friends who used to make lamps out of blenders. They were kind of cool. They would take the glass blender, the pitcher, and they would spray this paint inside that would frost it, and then they would take out the spinny blades part and then put in a light bulb socket, and then they would take out all the guts from the inside of the blender, and then and then you had this blender that you would just sit on your desk or whatever, and then there's a toggle switch generally to turn it on or something like that. They'd wire up something like that, so you could just push the button and hit frappe or whatever, and then the light would come on. And they were cool, and they would I think they sold, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen of them before they got tired of doing it. Happy Sunday from Ireland. Have you seen the new metal filter paints from Green Stuff World? They look really interesting. There's not a single store anywhere near me that ever handles any of their stuff. I used to follow them on Instagram. I don't know if I still do anymore, so I haven't kept up with their stuff that much, the Green Stuff World folks. Trying to introduce tabletop gaming to my family in Jamaica. Any suggestions on any good new game suggestions, skirmish style? I think one of the best kind of easy to teach games, as long as if you're interested in fantasy, one of the best easy to teach games is a game called Song of Blades and Heroes. You can get the PDF for $8, I think, still to this day. You can get, I think the print version is less than $20, and it's like a print-on-demand thing through a company called Lulu, I believe. But just look up Song of Blades and Heroes. It's produced by a company called Ganesha Games. I don't remember exactly how to pronounce that. But it's the Indian kind of elephant, Hindu elephant god thing. Anyway, so they produced that game, and that's the game that I teach when I go to conventions, like small local conventions that are mostly board games and Magic and stuff like that. And then I will be like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to play a miniature game, and people who've never played miniature games before sit down and play. And it's a simple but still elegant system that works really well. And so yeah, I've pushed that one a bunch. So yeah, Song of Blades and Heroes is a good one. Making the switch to minis from 1/6 scale garage kits down the rabbit hole. Oh, it's a rabbit hole. But congratulations on kind of making the switch, though. It's fun. Like, if you're just interested in painting just for display, it's not going to be hugely different from garage kits. Maybe scale size is definitely a thing. But if you're interested in getting into playing some games with these miniatures, it's a different kind of paint. Well, it's not actually a different kind of paint. It's the same paint. It's a different style of painting. Let's say that. I find that when I paint for tabletop, which is 99% of the time, there's a lot of like, that's good enough, or okay, I made a little bit of a goof there, and if I think of it, I'll fix it, or whatever. Or I don't need to do 5 layers of different glazes here to make this blend, And I'm looking for stuff that I'm going to set on the tabletop, and you're going to see it from a bit of a distance, and it doesn't need to be crazy super great. I still like to have my stuff look decent up close, but there is also a limit to up close. It is definitely like shooting those skeletons that I posted on Instagram. You get to a certain point with macro photography on miniatures, and I don't care how nice the miniature looks and how good the person is at painting it. You get real close, and you're like, ugh, that's just not good. So there's a limit to how close you should get to your miniatures as you're photographing them, because you will get to a point where you're like, this miniature looks so great, I was so happy with it, and then you take a super close-up picture of it, and you're like, oh my god, please no. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, tabletop, if you're interested in doing this for tabletop purposes, like you're going to be using it to play games with and stuff like that, it's a really fun hobby. Even if you're just doing display, but I personally don't do display, so I don't have a bunch of, let's say, advice, I guess, on that. But there are other folks out there who do. Check out our good friend Sam Lenz, Lenz, over there on, well, he's not really doing Twitch these days, but he is doing YouTube. Yeah, definitely check him out on YouTube. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. I've seen old metal plug-in percolator-style coffee pots made into cool kitchen counter nightlights. They drilled holes in the side of the pattern, making a picture, and then put a light inside. Neat. Oh, that's kind of cool. I could see someday when I'm retired, if I get to ever retire, who knows, I could definitely see, like, taking old pieces of furniture and just sort of, like, fixing them up and stuff like that. I've watched channels on YouTube about that where, like, I was at the local Goodwill and I saw this table and it was $10, and I bought it and I took it home and I stripped off all the ickiness and I sanded it down. I did a bunch of stuff and I restained it and whatever. Now it looks nice, and now I can sell it for $100 or whatever, that kind of thing. I could see that being kind of fun. And you don't need, it's much less equipment that you need than you do when you're building. Like when you're building furniture, you need planers and routers and just so many different pieces that I don't even know of. But when you're just like fixing or stripping and repurposing, you need a little bit more in the hand tool situation, and you need like certain chemicals for stripping off paint and doing all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to buy tons of very loud machines like planers and joiners and all that kind of junk. So that's nice. Any sci-fi game suggestions? I would tell you to look at Stargrave if you're interested in that. If you're looking at you can get this online as a PDF through Wargame Vault. You should be able to get the print version if you're interested. Hopefully at your local store soon. If not, I would check with Osprey and see. Hopefully they'll have some, but I don't know if they're out of production. Otherwise, there's another game called Star Breach, which I don't think you can get in hardcover currently, but you can get in softcover. They also have a free download, like of a slightly simpler version of the rules. And it's not that the rules are simpler, it's that there's like not fancy artwork as much. Like this stuff is not in the free version, but you can go to starbreach.com and definitely try that out and then decide whether you want to buy the fancier PDF, the soft cover. This was part of, I think, a Kickstarter, so I don't know if you can get a hardcover anymore. But yeah, there's a bunch of different sci-fi games out there. I'm interested in Stargrave a lot because I love the concept of, like, you're a crew. There's a captain, a first mate, and then the rest of the crew. Things are very customizable. It's designed to be definitely played in campaign style, and I liked Frostgrave a lot, which this is basically based off of. So yeah, take a look at that. Sam Lenz is a huge inspiration for me, says C. Hewlett. I agree. He is Well, I mean, I can't say for sure that he is actually a huge inspiration for you specifically, but I think he is a huge inspiration for a lot of people. Definitely. Let's see here. I had that experience with some of my older models before I got better at painting them and taking photos of them. Yeah, just even when you're really, really good, getting too close, it brings every little issue out into like, extreme focus with a really, really good macro lens. That's the problem. Yeah. Thing that's important to remember about Sam Lenz is that he is the biggest advocate of the concept of illusion, making something look like more than it is. He paints with large brushes. Generally, yeah. Well, and I do to some degree as well. He still generally paints with even bigger brushes than I do usually. But there's a big benefit to painting with bigger brushes. If you've got a nice big brush that comes to a really good point, there's a big benefit to doing that because that brush can hold a lot more paint. So you're not constantly having to go back to the pot, go back to the pot, go back to the pot. If your paint brush has a big belly, which when you're talking about the bristles, it's kind of the middle part. Like here's the tip and here's where it goes in the metal part, the ferrule. And it's this middle part here is known as the belly of the brush. Having a nice big belly on a brush really makes it so that you are not constantly like, oh, I'm going to paint again and all that kind of stuff. And so you can kind of keep moving and it's a good idea. Most people have a tendency to use brushes that are too small. Everybody should try to look at beefing up a little bit on the size of their brushes. Let's see here. Using my old Star Wars D6 metal minis from West End Games for Star Wars Legions. Nice. Privateer's fan base was toxic, so my FLG stopped supporting the tournaments. Same went for Yu-Gi-Oh! Dust Guys are haughty but manageable. I did not know that about Dust Guys. I mean, I know that there was... In general, the more competitive the game, sometimes you do have more of a potential for a toxic element. When it's super important who wins, then that's where that kind of thing can crop up. Whereas if it's more important for us to have a good time and have a fun game, because we're playing a game, games are supposed to be fun, then you have less toxicity, generally. But yeah, I can understand that. Yu-Gi-Oh! My local shop still, I think, does Yu-Gi-Oh! Or did. I don't know if they're currently... yeah, I think he said that they've started to do it again, but they had not done it for nearly a year, obviously, because of the pandemic. But I know there was a shop north of here that basically was tired of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Kids. But that doesn't mean that all Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are bad. It just meant that that particular group in that particular city were causing trouble, and the owner of the place was just like, yeah, we don't want you guys here anymore. So, that happens. Sam Lenz is so strong that he lifts me up. Nice, Malev. Never blow your pics of your minis up bigger than life size. It only ends in tears. Yeah, I can see that. Larger brushes are the tip you and Sam gave me that got me off a plateau in my painting. Nice. Good to hear it. Absolutely. I like big brushes and I cannot lie. It's important to not lie in that situation. I find I use a number 1 Raphael 8404 for pretty much everything. Wondering if number 2 would be too big. I mean, if it ain't broke. Yeah, I mean, everybody paints differently. And so you might end up, look at James Wapple. James Wapple paints with a brush that most of us wouldn't touch because it's more of a... they basically almost have like a rounded tip. I forget exactly what the name of that type of brush is. But he paints with a brush and does amazing work. And then when you see the brushes he used, you're like, I don't know how you did that with that. But he does, and so it works out. So yeah, just because someone's like, no, you have to do it this way. No one should ever tell you have to do it that way. They may give you a suggestion. This worked well for me. This worked well for me and a bunch of other people that I know. I learned this from somebody else. They told me about it. I found out it worked great. But it might not work for you, but you can always give it a try. That definitely makes sense. I think Sam actually is this hobby's sex symbol. More than me, certainly. He works out. I take walks. That's about it. He's like pumping iron and stuff, So there's that. Totally makes sense. James mostly paints in oils, though, right? These days, yeah, he's generally sticking to oils as well, too. So there's a lot of blending and all that kind of stuff going on there. Oil paints take a lot longer to dry, which means it's much easier to blend them over long periods or, minutes or maybe even sometimes hours, whereas acrylics, they dry very quickly, so you have to blend them very quickly before they dry because you can't blend them once they're dry. Filbert, That is the name. It sounds like a cartoon character. Might be a cartoon character, but filbert brushes is the type of brushes that he uses. Yep. It's not the arrow, it's the teacher. Whoa, that's deep. That's deep. Goobertown is our Bob Ross, and Adam is our Mr. Rogers. I'll take it. Yeah, absolutely, I'll take that. Not a problem at all. Absolutely. All right, well, folks, it's 11 o'clock in my neck of the woods, and I've got to get ready for the rest of the day. I might mow the lawn. I don't want to, but I might. And I've got a bunch of stuff with the secret project to get finished and work on that. And yeah, so hopefully we'll see some of you folks maybe on Twitch on tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central Time. I start like at 7 p.m. Central Time, go for 3 hours till 10 p.m. Central Time. But if you can't make that, then I'll be also Friday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, go till about 1 p.m. Central Time. And like I said, I'll still be working on Cursed City, not the skeletons, because they're done, but I'll be working on the Cursed City, 4 of the heroes, and then the 1 skeleton boss. So there's that. Absolutely. Well, again, I hope you have a good day, and get some hobby done if you want to, and or maybe just read a good book, you know, whatever you want to do. Hopefully you find something fun to do, and we'll see you again, at least here, the next 2 weeks, but otherwise we'll see you for the regular Fridays, which, you know, there's not communication because those are recorded. But if you want to, you know, chit-chat some more, Twitch tomorrow or Friday, or we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for watching.